Hello, everybody. Welcome to the latest edition of USC Trojans Live here at the Voice of College Football. Mark Rogers is away with family, so we hope he's enjoying his Monday night. And so Tim Prangley's having some microphone audio issues. We'll see if he can get them resolved. All right. While he tries to get those issues resolved, I'm going to start you off and definitely welcome your comments. I'll be happy to field comments, questions about various things in college football, about USC. And it's a relatively quiet week with USC, selling into spring practice, the spring game a few weeks away. And I know that the thing that Tim was going to feature on our show this week, Deuce Robinson, because announcement date this Saturday, April 1st. Is USC going to be the victim of an April Fool's joke? And remember, it was about 11 and a half months ago in the spring 2022 when we were all hoping and actually expecting, not just hoping, expecting that Josh Conerly was going to be a Trojan. USC was going to bag that elite offensive line recruit, something that, Clay Helton, struggled to do on a consistent basis. And then whoopsie, an abrupt turn to Eugene in the arms of Dan Lanning and Adrian Clem. And so, that one really stung, and it raised some questions about not just Lincoln Riley, but also Josh Henson, offensive line coach. They couldn't close the sale. And, what about this new staff in terms of being able to recruit offensive linemen? And then Francis Mauigoa also slipped away. But as you saw in the summer and also in the transfer portal, Henson was able to put pieces together, was able to bring in some significant guys, Bobby Haskins from Virginia. That proved to be a very important portal pickup. And since then, in the subsequent recruiting cycle, you've seen USC load up on, really more the portal than the recruiting, but still, there have been some recruits coming into the program, and Josh Henson really has answered a lot of the questions, and he's addressed a lot of the doubts that have greeted USC in terms of being able to recruit on the offensive line. I mean, there's still a higher ceiling to go for Henson as an offensive line recruiter, but between what's been coming in on the recruiting side and what's coming in on the transfer portal side, like Jarrett Kingston from Washington State, very exciting to have him aboard. And USC's offensive line does look pretty solid. And I would say that you have a little bit better depth in terms of first and second on the depth chart across the offensive line. Not fully loaded in terms of everything is totally sealed and, you have airtight excellence across the board. I don't think you can go that far, but I do think you have better 1-2 depth at the 5 positions than you had last season because, Mason Murphy, not fully ready. Gino Quinones, not fully ready. They were in there for little bits of time. Cortland Ford struggled after having early injury problems. So there were some wobbles. And, of course, the Oregon State game when Justin Dedich got hurt, he wasn't near anything close to 100%. You saw some stumbles in that game in Corvallis. And, of course, we all found out how significant it was to not have Andrew Voorhees in the Pac-12 championship game against Utah. So on balance, USC, where it stands with the offensive line, pretty good place. But go for a full circle and to draw a large circle back to this time of year, 1 year ago, Josh Conerly, that was a recruitment that USC was expecting to nail down. Trojans were expecting to land the plane, close the sale, and here we go. A year later, we're expecting Duce Robinson to be a USC Trojan. But there's that little bit of doubt in the back of our minds. Is this going to be another Josh Conerly situation? And, April 1st, the jokes write themselves, right? Is this going to be another day where USC has a little banana cream pie on its face and another team walks away with a prized recruit that Lincoln Riley was expecting to get? So, we will just have to wait for Deuce Robinson's decision. But it has to be said that, if USC can bring him aboard, what's the expectation? And we'll hopefully we'll be able to talk a little bit more next week about all of this, and hopefully we'll have a welcome Deuce Robinson show next week. So we don't want to go too far down the tracks, but basically we'll just mention it here right now, and that is that Deuce Robinson could be a tight end for USC the same way Kyle Pitts was a tight end for Dan Mullen and quarterback Kyle Trask and the Florida Gators in 2020 when they lit up scoreboards, made the SEC championship game, put 46 points on Alabama, lost 52-46, a very Alex Grinch, Lincoln Riley style game, if I might say so. That game against Nick Saban and Mac Jones and Devontae Smith and the rest of the Alabama offense, coordinator Steve Sarkisian on the road to the national championship for the Tide. But anyway, Duce Robinson, he's a field stretching tight end. He's not just a blocking and tackling tight end who catches passes out of the backfield for short to intermediate gains. No, he would be a field stretcher, and that would be a tremendous new piece that Lincoln Riley can incorporate into his offense, giving a shiny new toy to the Trojans and everything that they do. Now, of course, all that having been said about Deuce Robinson, and I know this, I've seen it in the comments, and it's a pretty rational, logical thing. USC fans are worried about the defense, and of course they should be. That's where all of this is going to turn in the 2023 season, for better or worse. It's going to be, can the defense significantly raise its game and avoid the dumpster fire, which was the back end of the 2022 season. And talking about back ends of seasons, this is a backloaded schedule. The first several games should be fine, should be manageable. Colorado, Arizona State, after, the non-con with San Jose State and Nevada early on. Trojans should be unbeaten heading into October, and more specifically, they should be unbeaten heading into Saturday, October 14th, South Bend. And then they go up against Notre Dame and quarterback Sam Hartman, the transfer from Wake Forest. Like, that's figures to be the day when the season begins, and basically we learn just where USC's defense really is, just how much the work that Alex Grinch is putting in right now and that he's going to put in the off season and in August camp. And then early in the season, looking at film and just getting guys acclimated, we're going to learn where that work is going, what purpose it's achieving, is it having an effect? So in many ways, we will all be excited for the return of college football in late August at USC, but very likely, unless something really goes wrong, and boy, heaven forbid that USC steps on a rake against Deion Sanders in Colorado or Kenny Dillingham in Arizona State. Very unlikely to happen. But boy, if that does happen, it is going to be a nightmare. But in all likelihood, while the season technically starts in late August, it essentially is likely to start in mid-October. So that's when we find out what this USC team is made of. So that's kind of the preamble, and dealt with Deuce Robinson. I know that Tim, if he comes aboard, he'll want to have a few things to say about Deuce Robinson. And hey, by the way, I stopped in and said hello on Trojan Conquest Live, Tim Prangley's Sunday evening show with Rick Anaya, LBC Trojan. They're doing a great job, Tim and Rick. 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. You want to be listening to and watching Trojan Conquest Live every Sunday, giving you more of the USC content you crave here at the Voice of College Football. All right, so I'm going to go through some comments and try to address what's going on, and just comment on your comments and also your questions. So Gerardo Zalata, great commenter, frequently has something interesting to say here. So you can't lose what you never owned, and why worry about what you can't control? So we celebrate the guys that come, and that's all. Sure. I mean, good mindset to have. And this is a reminder about recruitments and transfer portal pursuits, and that is that when you miss on a guy, you can't just say the sky is falling. It's on to the next battle. you are not going to win every battle. You're not going to win every pursuit. And we certainly don't want to be the kinds of people who say, "Oh, we never liked that recruit anyway. Oh, yeah, we didn't really need him." You know what? We don't badmouth recruits like that. We don't deal with this. I mean, this is a life choice that's for the individual. Josh Carnley wanted to go to Eugene. That's great. Like that, he's choosing his path. Best of luck to him. That should be the attitude always, always, always with recruits. All right, let's handle this one. Still worried, frankly, that USC under Riley has yet to land a 5-star from out west, a coveted OL or DL prospect under Riley. Yeah, I mean, that is like we need to see. I did mention earlier, LFG, that like the ceiling has not, we're not even close to the ceiling, or we're not even close to where the ceiling should be under Lincoln Riley in terms of offensive line recruiting and line play recruiting. Like there is a much higher place that this staff can, should, and frankly needs to reach in terms of its overall recruitment. Now, you do have the transfer portal, and you got Anthony Lucas. That is a significant piece in the portal, taking advantage of the splintering, fragmenting situation at Texas A&M under Jimbo Fisher. The portal's existence not only enables coaches such as Lincoln Riley and coaches in all sports, we're seeing this in basketball too, to immediately replenish the roster with, a seasoned player, a player who has college snaps under his belt. And so you're not getting a freshman who's, green and inexperienced and hasn't adjusted to the speed of the college game. No, you're getting a much more ready-made player whom you could plug into the lineup. So the transfer portal obviously really resets the chessboard a lot more quickly than just going after recruits. But that having been said, like your USC, your Lincoln Riley, like you need to be hammering the trail so that, if you get a higher volume of recruits, and this is part of the recruiting business. Like I'm not a recruiting expert. I don't spend a lot of time about recruiting, but I know enough to know that, if you get 3 or 4 elite prospects, doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to get 3 or 4 hits, 3 or 4 success stories, but it does increase the odds that one of them is going to be an elite recruit, which makes your team so much better than it previously was. And so we do need to see the volume, LFG. Like that is absolutely correct. We need to see more hits, more home runs in terms of recruiting line play. And that's going to give USC the talent and the depth that it will need to be successful in the Big Ten Conference. And, one of the things that we talked about on Trojan Conquest Live with Tim and Rick on Sunday evening, so just, basically 27, 28 hours ago or so, one of the things we talked about was Alex Grinch, addressing the media last week. He addressed the media for the first time since the Cotton Bowl. And he and Lincoln Riley both had a number of comments. And I made the point, and I don't know if you were watching this. So if you weren't, here's what I said. And I said this to Tim and Rick, that Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch both talked about, strength training, conditioning, getting in the weight room, that guys are thicker, guys are more solid, their bodies are being built up. And that's something which takes some time, and you couldn't all do it in 1 year under a strength and conditioning coach, Benny Wiley, who came with Lincoln from Oklahoma. And there's obviously a certain amount of validity to that. And I guess in the spring, that's the kind of thing you talk about because, well, what else is going on? Like you're not seeing live games. So I guess, a coaching staff would naturally mention improved strength and conditioning and improved weight training and all of that going in the right direction. So, we shouldn't overanalyze this and we shouldn't get too caught up in all of it. But I did say that, gosh, if the coaching staff is focusing on strength training, like that doesn't tell me that the players are doing better at technique in terms of tackling. Like that's what I would really like to have read and would like to have heard from Alex Grinch in terms of, his first address, his first comments since the Cotton Bowl. I would like to be seeing more about how, guys are picking up technique. And, we taught players to rake the ball away. We taught players to be ball hawks. We taught players to force turnovers, and that really stuck. That really set in last year. But now they're getting the handle on tackling. Now we're seeing guys wrapping up better. We're seeing guys, secure ball carriers at the first point of contact. Like, that's the thing I'd like to see. And again, like, we don't want to overreact, but think of it this way, just in terms of preferences, okay? Preferences. What I would like to hear in an ideal world. That's what I'm trying to walk you through here. That's what I'm trying to make distinctions about. And the things that were said, while, reasonable and fine as far as they go, they weren't the best things that I possibly could have heard. They're not the things that make me feel supremely confident about, is this defense getting better? Are things turning around for the better? So that those details, like, everyone's is going to have a different opinion about that, but like, that's my preference. That's my inclination in terms of what Lincoln Riley and Alex Grinch said about this defense. So, I mean, on that point, though, in terms of strength training and conditioning, so Roger Dodger mentions that, guys were, not that massive. They were not that big and bulky. So I would say that more size is needed, especially inside up the middle. And it does bear mentioning, Roger Dodger and other people of a similar line of thought, that, the way teams can neutralize Caleb Williams without having their defense on the field is just to keep the ball. And that goes to being able to run up the middle. And USC's run fits, of course, were terrible in the first half of the season. And you did see offenses being able to gash the Trojans at times. So, getting more size, getting more bulk, getting more of a run stuffing presence, like, that's certainly important. So I'm not trying to say that commenting about strength and weight training is irrelevant or it doesn't matter. It does. But just that my first point of preference, my first point of emphasis is, are guys picking up technique better? Are they getting more fundamentally sound? And, one of the nuances about the Alex Grinch 2022 season is that while the turnover differential was spectacular, and the one thing that USC's defense was good at doing was getting turnovers, this is the big reminder, right? What if the turnovers don't come? What if you go against a quarterback who makes the right decisions? What if you go against running backs who don't give up the ball, who don't cough up the ball in traffic when you deliver a good stick, when you deliver a good form tackle? What happens if the turnovers don't come? And that's the measure of a good defense, right? Not just that you win in different ways, sometimes forcing turnovers, sometimes getting stops and creating good field position for your offense, but it's more about, like, can you stand on your own? Can you stand tall when the offense isn't making big mistakes? Can you still withstand when an offense is not giving you free possessions and free field position? Can you do that? And we saw what happened in the back end of the season when USC's opponents weren't making as many mistakes. Oregon State served up 4 interceptions on a silver platter. And that's the reason USC was able to win that crucial game in Corvallis. Thank goodness. Because if Oregon State commits 1 or maybe just 2 turnovers, that game probably slips away from the Trojans. So, can this defense be good and successful when the turnover faucet is off and USC just has to get stops, has to be able to just get off the field on a series of downs? That tension point is undeniable, and it's the piece of the puzzle that Alex Grinch has to add this coming season. Maybe I need to add Tim here. Maybe Tim. Yeah, I could hear you.
Oh my God! Thank goodness. How's it going, Matt? Sorry, guys.
No problem. Glad you made it.
Yeah, me too.
All right, Tim. So Deuce Robinson thoughts. I know you had him, so let's let's get your opinions on the Deuce.
Well, we were just talking. Rick and I were talking about the strange timing of everything going on. A lot of pieces moving around. We know there's the Rayola news that a lot of people think that he might become USC. Obviously, he's the quarterback. He was a quarterback with Duce Robinson at Pinnacle in Arizona. Along with the fact that you have Epps leaving, he starts a couple of practice. It's kind of strange. He would come to spring ball, play a couple of practices, and then leave. I thought that was a bit odd timing. And the fact that on last night we got the bat signal from Heritage Hall, right? All USC fans out there, Twitter, they Twitter at the peace sign, the fight on sign on the emoji. That usually means we have a silent that's going to come out and commit soon. Now, there were a lot of guys on campus this weekend, so it could be really anybody. But, piecing everything together, the fact that some of the best guys in the business are, Blair Angulo and a couple other guys at 247 are saying, hey, he's probably coming. So that's where we're at. What do you think?
I mean, I would not bet against it. Like, I would certainly say that USC's the favorite right now. But I do remember the Josh Connerly recruitment and how much of an ambush it felt like. And so, I certainly like USC's chances, but I certainly don't want to act as though, this is a done deal. Like, those are two of the most infamous words in college sports, whether we're talking about coaching contracts or recruitments or transfer portal. I don't like to say done deal. I don't like to say stone cold lock. I don't like to wade into that territory because you're just setting yourself up for that ambush. And that's a terrible place to be. But quietly optimistic. That's where I'm at with this.
Well, it was really ominous. Like, I think you brought up a second ago. I was rebooting my computer so many times I missed a lot of the conversation. But the fact that you said that it's on April 1st, that's a bit ominous. You know what I mean? Even if we do get the commit, whatever, it's gonna be like, okay, well, is the hammer gonna drop the other way? So yeah, that's what I'm concerned about. No, I'm not getting killed. It was my wife scaring my son upstairs. So sorry about that.
Well, in terms of, if for people who missed your show with Rick, and I was part of a conversation in terms of going through Alex Grinch addressing the media for the first time since the Cotton Bowl. For anyone who missed that, give our viewers here on the Voice of College Football just kind of a condensed version of your reaction to what Grinch said and where that leaves you as a USC analyst, heading into April.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry. I was trying to fix something.
Yeah. So, Alex Grinch addressed the media for the first time since the Cotton Bowl. And I know that you talked about his remarks on your Sunday show. For people who missed the Sunday show, what was your general reaction to what Grinch had to say?
Yeah, he basically is saying that there's no magic to this. And I think a lot of people, we had every right to be disappointed, right? Saying that we don't have the right guys in place. It's not like we were playing, Georgia, and we were playing Ohio State's offense, right? They weren't tearing us up. We played some pretty good offenses in general, but it wasn't like the rest of the Pac-12 had superior talent to what we had on the field. And so the numbers that we were giving up were a bit disappointing. The lack of fundamentals, the lack of tackling, et cetera, that was also very disappointing to see. I mean, literally at the end of that Cotton Bowl, there was everything had to go just wrong, for USC, or just right for them to win that game. If they make them drive down that, on that one, they get a 35-yard kickoff return, then they get a 65-yard pass, right? They score, and then we get the safety, and then they march down the field again and score on us. And we had fourth down how many times? Literally, we had so many chances to end that game, and USC didn't do it. That was all on the defense and disappointing. Although we say that, we get one first down. That's all another conversation. But the issue I had with with his comments prior to this year were like, I was expecting a lot more, because again, we do have good talent, not great, but good talent. What he's saying basically is that they're not installing a new defense, right? You expect that. I know we all think there's quick fixes in football now because we have the transfer portal, we have a lot of things in place, but it still takes time for guys to pick up a defense and a scheme. In the beginning, I remember they're talking about how the run fits were all wrong. That's why they're breaking these big runs, etc. Seemed like they got that under control, but then it started falling apart. There's two things to that. One, later in the season, even though guys were out there playing, they were playing hurt and banged up, right? It's a long season. USC played 14 games last year. And so that's a lot of wear and tear on a lot of guys getting a lot of reps up front. So there were guys playing, injured and hurt throughout the season. So that's an issue. Now, hopefully a little more depth on the defensive line. That's going to be great. But Grinch's big point is the guys know the system now. Sure, we have some newcomers coming in, but even the guys like Damani Jackson and Zion Branch, those guys aren't exactly new. They got to sit on the sidelines. They got to watch all that stuff going on. So they got all those mental reps going. So they should be ready for this year. And then these guys now it's not just the coaches, but the players, the veterans on the team, they can help to install the defense for the young guys coming on. So what he's saying is they're a step ahead. They're moving guys around, and they can really look at other things. And then also, I think Riley talked about the fact that same thing. This time last year, they were trying to turn the culture around. They're trying to get a winning, momentum going on in the program. Now they can really work on the plays, get everything right, doing the fundamental drills. So I think that was what I took away from what they said last week.
Yeah, one of the things that just makes me a little bit worried, and I'm sure a lot of other USC fans feel the same way, Tim, is that, and like what you said, like it all makes sense. It's fundamentally accurate. It's logical. It's reasonable that, to a certain extent, you always pretty much always need a second year under a coaching staff to more fully absorb what's going on. Like this, Urban Meyer didn't succeed in year one at Florida, right? Like he needed that transition year in 2005 to get settled. Like even the very best coaches are going to need at least 1 year to get settled, usually. Like unless they're inheriting a Lamborghini or a Ferrari.
Like Ron Zook.
USC didn't have that.
Meyer did, yeah. So some guys walk into a championships roster already. Ron Zook had a pretty darn good thing going, right? And then when Meyer took over, then it was already set to go. But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, so even the best coaches need a year, and so to that extent, the year 2 to year 1 difference, that's a salient point. But my concern, I know a lot of USC fans share this, and injuries played a part, but you can only put so much at the feet of injuries. That USC actually regressed as the season went along. That USC, had really good defensive games in week 4 against Oregon State and week 6 against Washington State. And then you saw things get progressively worse. And the Utah game in October in Salt Lake City, there was a week off after that game. And so if the game against Arizona coming after the break, the off week, if that game in particular had given a solid performance, I would then be able to look at what happened in November and then in early December and say, injuries caught up with the team. Guys weren't fully healthy coming back. But I think about that Arizona game, and I know Arizona made a lot of great catches in that game. And, it'll be great to have Dorian Singer on our team this year, not having him on the other side. But even then, the fact that USC was just so bad on defense in that Arizona game after a week off, that told me that, okay, if things are being taught, if things are being ingrained and incorporated, if guys are soaking up knowledge and this thing is taking, like guys are getting it, that game in particular against Arizona should have been better. I could even allow for a sliding scale and a grading on a gentle curve against Cal because the attrition accumulated as the season continued. And also, when you're playing Cal and Colorado before that finishing kick of UCLA Notre Dame, natural letdown spot. You're not going to have a full emotional fuel tank for those Cal and Colorado games, because you're thinking about UCLA and Notre Dame, and you're not going to play every game with the same level of intensity. But the Arizona game, again, after an off week, let's make a statement. We were embarrassed in Salt Lake City. I really look at that game as a concerning example heading into this season of, does Alex Grinch know how to get guys to steadily improve, carry a certain level of performance, carry a certain standard forward as a season goes along? Like, that is a point of concern I have, and it really goes against the idea that, well, in year 2, guys are going to get it, and they're going to understand the things that they didn't get in year 1. I'm not saying like you're wrong. I'm not saying that that Riley or Grinch are full of it when they talk about year 1 to year 2, because again, that is a real thing. It's a natural
big leap.
thing.
It's real. Yep.
Yeah, it is real. It is real. But can Grinch, in terms of the day-to-day, in terms of the week-to-week, can he get more retention, and can he adjust to bad days one weekend? And, there are going to be a few. Like, they're going to happen. Hopefully the offense is going to bail the defense out, just as was the case most of the time in 2022. Like, when a bad game happens, such as the Salt Lake City game, the game against Utah in mid-October, what's USC's response going to be the next week? And so that is the kind of thing that is going to still be fresh in my mind when we go into October and the meat of the schedule this season.
So you bring up some good points, but let me jump in and say this. Remember, they did lose Gentry in that game.
Yes.
So they lost Gentry. Someone else got dinged up. They played, but they were playing hurt. I mean, a lot of guys were, like I was saying, that second half of the season, guys were playing hurt. And there's no excuses. Everyone gets hurt. That's football, right? But I think part of the excitement for this year is we don't have the same roster.
Yeah,
we don't.
True.
We got a lot more size. The guys that were smaller did get bigger. I know you took some shots at me for being the fanboy of Benny Wiley and saying, well, the guys are getting bigger, but they are getting bigger.
They are.
And mass, I mean, we all took physics class, right?
Yep.
You got mass is going to add to force, right? The more mass, more force. So I'm just saying that they are getting bigger. They are getting faster. They're getting more athletic. I mean, I was drooling. We were doing the secondary. We were doing a rundown of the secondary, and you just look at the size of a Damani Jackson. The guy, he's a specimen. He looks like a running back. He looks like going back. I brought up the point about we used to have safeties like, tell me if you guys remember these names. Taylor Mays, right? When that guy hit someone, they knew about it 3 counties over, right? Jason Leach. This guy would hit people. They would not go forward. They would go backward. And we're hearing about that kind of contact. I do believe they're instilling toughness that was missing for a number of years in our program. I just want to see all these things. Why we should be positive about this is because, again, that second year leap is a real thing. That's not some mystery thing. It's not the answer. And I think actually, everyone gets on Grinch for a lot of things. And, again, there's a lot of question marks, rightfully so. But the guy doesn't mince words. Of all the USC coaches I've heard in a long time, he flat out will say, we sucked. We did this wrong. We need to fix this. He does own up to whatever's going on.
He does.
It's
the best thing about him.
Yeah, he does sound like he knows what he's talking about. We do need to see it in August and September, especially in October and November. We need to see it coming up. But he has the pieces in place. He now has the talent. Getting guys in the transfer portal that he has some tacklers. He got some size. He got some guys back from injury. We covered all that last night. There are no excuses this year. We definitely will have a more talented roster than pretty much everyone. Maybe Notre Dame, maybe Oregon will be up there with us, but everyone else on our schedule, can you think of anyone else that should be in close to the talent we have on our defense?
In terms of defensive talent?
Yeah. Okay. Offense, I know. There's probably maybe Ohio State. We could talk offense, but defensively,
I'll put Utah up there. Like Kyle Whittingham will have a defense that can compete. Maybe not excel, but certainly compete. So, and Notre Dame as well. Like Notre Dame in South Bend, that should shape up as a challenge. And it's not. I mean, USC's offense certainly did well, but it didn't go nuclear against Notre Dame, and going against Drew Pine certainly helped USC to a degree in that game. I know that Pine didn't throw an incomplete pass for roughly the first 3 quarters, but he did commit 2 huge turnovers in that game. And so, like, Notre Dame's defense, was not Swiss cheese, and it did hold USC under 40, which, like, that I don't know about an accomplishment, but like, it certainly means that you're better than a lot of other defenses in the country. So Utah and Notre Dame have defenses that, are certainly worth respecting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you remember though, that Pine was able to go off because they took away the run. The big worry going that game is that Notre Dame's going to run the ball down our throats.
True.
And they stuffed the run in that game. They
They did.
said, okay, Pine, go ahead and win the game. And he wasn't able to do it.
Right.
You have to be able to handle that pressure. And in the clutch moments, he didn't clutch. So maybe he clutched up too much. So, yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that we talked about on your show last night and on Sunday night at Trojan Conquest Live was just, the guys coming back from injury, Romello Height, Damani Jackson. And I really like the point you made earlier on tonight's show that, these guys didn't play a ton, but they got coached up and they got exposure to the system. So it's not just they didn't play, it's they received coaching, but we weren't able to see that manifest itself. So, like, that is real knowledge that can be applied on the field this season. And I think that gets to the best case scenario for this USC defense is not just that players are being able to play this year who weren't able to play very much last year, but they also bring knowledge of the system and can be teachers and can be communicators in the spring, in August, on the on-ramp to that big October-November gauntlet against Notre Dame, Utah, Oregon, Washington.
Yeah, the PRPs, there's a big part of the getting ready for fall camp. When the player run practices are a big part of the camp, and getting ready for fall camp. The young guys is good. It'll be a lot of time where they can get some mental reps, that's just some physical reps, just being also pointers, from these guys who are now veterans in the system. They'll be able to help the newcomers to the team and get them, into the system. So I think it works all the way around. You literally have coaches on the field now that understand the system. Yeah.
One of the interesting things about USC this season, and like we've talked mostly about the defense, and rightly so, because that's the main point of concern. But it's worth thinking back to the Cotton Bowl, and not just. I mean, we all know about the defensive implosion, but one of the other notable features of the Cotton Bowl is that USC was so good on third downs in that game, and also USC and Riley had a ball control approach, because they're like, USC was taking the play clock under 10 seconds consistently, well before the final 5-6 minutes of regulation. Like late in the third quarter, very early in the fourth quarter, USC was taking the play clock down under 10 seconds. And I can't help but think that this season, as much as it's going to be a priority for USC to just score, rack up so many points that the defense, has more margin for error in that regard, I'm really wondering, Tim, is USC going to sacrifice tempo or the quick strike and place, is Riley going to place more of a focus on 8-minute touchdown drives and, really trying to hammer the ball and, like, okay, we can use Caleb Williams and his downfield passing when we really need it, if we really need it, but our primary method of scoring is going to be a ball possession style, featuring Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones behind a nasty big offensive line. I mean, I'm certainly interested to see if the run pass mix, play sequencing, and trying to be more incremental on offense, not because the quick strike is devalued, but just because, like, let's maybe ease our defense into the season, like, early on. Maybe if we play more ball control offense and the defense isn't on the field for nearly as many plays in September, that will get us into October with a lot less wear and tear on the defense, and then we can really get that defense to play better. it's going to be fascinating to see how Lincoln Riley juggles that particular tension point in the first half of the schedule before we get into the difficult backloaded second half of the season.
Yeah, I like your point. I mean, that makes we're just talking about the 14-game season, how that the wear and tear on those bodies. So not only do they have depth now on defense, because they do, that front seven got bigger and got deeper. But also I like your point. We're picking up, going into South Carolina, and getting that Marshawn Lloyd, who is a star. I mean, that guy looks like a prototypical pro running back, man. He looks sick. And then we already know what Austin Jones can do. We've seen his production. Then brought in the big guys. We got White, you got Kingston that came in, and you got Cortland Ford coming back. They've been talking about the fact that Cortland Ford was hurt a lot. He got some early reps and then kind of disappeared. And everyone's thinking, is he in a doghouse, whatever. He was inconsistent. They did speak about him being inconsistent. When you have a Heisman quarterback, you want to make sure his blind side's protected. So you got to make sure he's healthy and good to go. But we got some size, right? You got Ethan White coming in, and you have Michael Tarquin. Both those guys coming over from Florida, and then Kingston down from Wazoo. We got big linemen, I think. And I think you, and I think Riley, and I think a lot of us are thinking the same thing, is we're going to control the ball. We're going to run down through it. And then we obviously have our deep threats. We got plenty of deep, and we can go on those explosives. But we're going to control the ball, slow down the reps, protect our defense, and take care of the ball. Yeah, but I don't know, because I just see all the playmakers, man. It's going to be hard to slow this offense down. But I do think they have the ability to do that. They will have the ability to salt away fourth quarters with running the ball, without a doubt in my mind. I think they can do that. And it's going to be interesting to see, like you said, the ratio of run to throw. But I also think the first half of the season really lines up, as much as it's a gauntlet towards the end. It really lines up the first half of it where there is no reason. That's why I don't think, someone made a comment about Caleb coming back to repeat the Heisman. I don't think he's going to repeat the Heisman because he's not going to put the numbers up. He's going to get the wins, I think. But I think this team, we're going to have a big lead. I'm hoping we have a big lead in all these early games, and they get him out there and they start getting Miller Moss. It's Miller time. We're going to get some reps for him.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be important as well.
Sure,
but also for the fact you want to protect Caleb for that run down the end as well. So I'm thinking that we're going to not see as many reps for Caleb. I think we're going to see, like you said, we're going to be running the ball. And once they move to, Miller, they're going to do a ball controlled, run the ball, run the clock out, and get off the field. I agree with that.
And USC was not able to bring the hammer, of course, to Arizona, to Cal, a little bit to Colorado. Like Miller Moss was able to play the fourth quarter against Colorado, and that's pretty much it. And not having Miller Moss being able to get on the field as much for his development, like that was a real limitation. So, you get into this season with San Jose State and Nevada early on, like you need to be putting those games away early, like halftime, early third quarter, so that Miller Moss gets a half and Caleb Williams can take a half off to, stay fresh, to not feel as much pressure over the course of the season, so that when you bring Caleb Williams into South Bend, into Eugene Autzen Stadium, that he's going to have, a full fuel tank, and he'll be ready to play his very best, which of course is going to be needed to beat Sam Hartman, to beat Bo Nix, to beat Dan Lanning. So like it's all part of a piece, and like it's not some incidental thing, and it's not a luxury. Like you really do need to blow out the teams you're expected to blow out, because that's how you develop players, and that's how you shepherd your starters through a grueling season. Let's also keep in mind, Tim, and of course, as fans know, but it's worth reminding everybody of this point here on the Voice of College Football, that USC has that early season off week and then has to play nine straight weeks 4 through 12. So it will really be important in those first 3 weeks before the off week. Week 0, week 1, week 2, before the week 3 off week in mid-September, going to be very important to get lots of bodies in and out, to get lots of backups, some meaningful time, not just, to as injury insurance, against making sure players are less likely to get hurt for the middle of the season, but also if injuries do happen, you will have given your backups a lot of playing time so that when they're asked to step in against Notre Dame or Utah or Washington or Oregon, they will have a much better idea of what the heck it is they're doing on the field. So, like, it will be important for USC to put San Jose State away in one half, to put Nevada away in one half. Like, this is how Nick Saban and Kirby Smart do it at Alabama and Georgia. They schedule those cupcake games, not just to give their starters a breather, but to develop their backups, to get the guys in the pipeline, familiar with on-field reps, giving them meaningful live action. And you can only do so much in practice. You need to send them onto the field. That's part of why they schedule the way that they do, and it's part of that proven formula, which works for them in Tuscaloosa and Athens.
Yeah, there is no substitute for actual game reps. There's no way you can prepare, especially guys that are either freshmen or guys that are coming off injury that haven't had significant playing time. There's the leap from high school to big time college football is a steep one, and they need to cut their teeth, like you said. That's going to be amazing. I think that we covered Gixer's question. Do you want to add anything else to that? I think you pretty much, I don't know if you read his question or not, but you were kind of covering it with the topic he just brought up.
Gixer, I don't know what's going to happen on the defensive side of the ball. I think that the offense is going to be great. Like you look at the offense, I don't see any significant weakness on the offensive side of the ball. And like so many people coming back, especially Caleb coming back, like that's just going to be a roaring machine. And it's all about the defense being able to, moderately improve such that, 46-45 and 43-42 losses become, 45-35, 45-31 type wins. And, so we just need to see the proof. We just need to see the things that Tim's mentioned, the strength training, the year 1 to year 2 transition, those natural organic processes set in. And also, with like Romello Height, with Domani Jackson, guys who were injured but got coached up, got exposure to what Grinch was doing, being able to play more this season. Like that is added depth, added bodies, and added knowledge. That really, to me, is how the pieces can fit together for USC.
One thing, though, we were propping up the offensive line, talking about how big they are, how great. We have to remember, though, the one really solid coach, I think, from the previous group of guys that we had in here was Clay McGuire, what he did in that 1 year with the offensive line. He really put this line together. Finally, he had an air raid type offensive line guy that knew how to coach it up the proper way, and they made long strides. And that was a veteran group on that. Those 5 dudes played a lot of reps together. They knew, 5, 6, they're like 6 deep actually. So those 6 guys played a lot of reps together. Although we're bringing in some big talented guys from all over the country, that it takes time to mesh as a unit. Of all the position groups, it's your secondary and your offensive line. They really got to be able to read each other. They have to know what to do. And the line calls you're going to have as talented as you have. Losing Nealon, and who's a guy making the line calls, calling everything out. He's your quarterback on the line, and so he's gone now.
This is why the return of Dedich, though, is so huge. It is absolutely huge. You cannot overstate the value of Dedich coming back.
And so so we believe, right, because he hasn't really played center as much in USC and in college. I know he was brought in as a top center, but he did not get a lot of those reps. It'll be interesting to see how well early. Thank goodness we have, again, an easy lineup, right? We got a little bit of a warm-up going through the season. Giving that offensive line time to gel, to get to know each other, Dedich to, like we talked about, you could practice all you want, but it's those real game time reps that really matter. Let him get his feet wet a little bit, and then hopefully that line comes together. But another thing is I really believe in Josh Henson. I mean, this guy is a really awesome coach, proven coach. What a steal getting him from Texas A&M when Bedenbaugh did not come over with him from the Oklahoma Sooners staff. That was a coup to get him. I'm a bit surprised, but now we're hearing about the NIL and throwing money around, down in Florida State, Miami, and Oregon, throwing tons of cash at these kids. I was kind of bummed we didn't land some of those marquee guys that Rick will name, but I will not name. They're dead to me. I don't want to talk about them anymore. Landing a couple of them would have been great. But what Henson's doing, I think, is going to be amazing. And so I'm excited about the offensive line. I'm excited about the guys came in, but I think we might have some early growing pains. So I hope fans stay a little bit patient, realizing it's going to take time for these guys to come together and gel.
Yeah, one important note in terms of like the early growing pains and being able to just work through those issues that are, likely to arise to some degree. One good thing, and again, like USC's schedule overall, it's a bear. It's going to be a very difficult schedule to handle in terms of a full 12-game platter. But one good thing, like it's generally unfavorable compared to 2022, of course. But the one really key plus for USC, you don't have a really thorny road trip early in the season. And that was the Oregon State game last season. Week 4, still pretty early in the journey. Was everybody going to figure it out enough to get through that test? In what has been historically a graveyard for USC teams, you don't have that kind of game. Like your big road game is Arizona State, early in the season. So, and I think that's going to be a much more manageable game than, compared to Corvallis, in terms of an early season road trip. So, in terms of having that really, there's always that game you circle on the schedule where, oh, that could be a real trap. That, we're walking into a hornet's nest, and USC doesn't have that kind of game this year, like compared to Corvallis last year. So, that should help the team to be able to just settle into the season and get to 6-0 heading into Notre Dame on Saturday, October 14th.
Yeah, and it's not as much the Murderers Row down the stretch as it would just been nice to have that bye week, maybe about 3 weeks later, right before that Notre Dame game. Having that bye week so early is going to be a bit weird, and that 9-game stretch is going to be pretty tough.
All right, this is a comment that's worth tackling. Which position group concerns you the most, or which group is still far away from playoff talent? I mean, Tim, I'll give you a crack at this one, but for me, it starts with the defensive line. It starts with, replacing Tuli Tuipulotu, being able to have multiple guys who are more regularly making plays. And like, Tyrone Taleni made a few really important plays over the course of the season. Solomon Byrd made a few really important plays here and there over the course of the season. But like every week, every game, not nearly, at the level that Tuipulotu and others were delivering. And of course, we also have to mention Corey Foreman in all of this. And like, in terms of Alex Grinch proving that he can develop players, and also proving, Tim, to your point, about the year 1 to year 2, can he squeeze production out of a player who's been, hurt? To be fair to him, he has been hurt, dealt with injuries a lot last season. But even then, like we were certainly expecting more upside, more of a contribution from him. And, he made the big play at the end of the UCLA game. So we were all thinking, oh, is that the eureka moment? Is that the moment when the light comes on and he just takes off? He didn't take off in the Pac-12 championship game or the Cotton Bowl. And that was a real disappointment. So, there are untapped resources here, and there are also still a lot of questions. And, we mentioned again that the best way to defend Caleb Williams is to not let him get on the field. So, you could say the secondary, might be the most worrisome position group. And again, I'll turn it over to you in just a moment. But for me, it really is the defensive line. That is so much of the battle. It's so much of the equation in terms of where we look at the epicenter of USC in terms of where this season's going to turn, how this season's going to unfold. If the defensive line, like if you just ask me, Matt, what position group can really make it the difference for USC this season? If the defensive line is significantly better, USC should be in great shape. That's where I'm going to plant my flag. But now, what about you?
I'm actually kind of happy because if we would have asked the same question, probably like in October of last year, I'll bet we both would have said linebacker. I know I would have.
Yeah.
But I'm not. Neither one of us are even thinking that right now.
That's right.
With the additions they have, adding in, bringing in Cobb, we know that Gentry is gonna be awesome. We know Shane Lee is healthy now. He's playing with an injured arm all season. Rajon Davis showed up in that Cotton Bowl. So there's a lot of guys there at the linebacker. That's pretty much cleared up. I agree with you. I'm okay on the secondary. I know that we have to replace Mekhi Blackman. That is not. I don't realize. I think most fans don't realize just what an awesome job he did last year of just locking down his side of the ball.
Yeah.
Just a great cover guy. He just shut guys down. They were in man a lot. They put him on an island. Of course, he got burned a couple of times. We saw that he got burned, but the reason why he got burned is the group I'm going to talk about, and that's that rush end position. I think I've been harping on this for a while now. If I'm right, they've moved Corey Foreman inside, I think. So he's going to have his hand in the dirt. So you're going to have guys on the outside there. There's some serious talent. We keep hearing about Romello Height, the transfer from Auburn. He was injured all last year. Hopefully he can stay healthy and show us why they were so excited about him coming on. They added Muhammad, right?
Georgia
Muhammad.
State.
Yeah, they added him. There was a lot of praise for him. They were talking about the fact that they're happy that he was a quarterback, and it's a story about him. He was a quarterback, and they're really actually Rick and I were talking. Rick was talking to me about it. He's saying, Rick's excited because you as a quarterback you see plays develop. I mean, you as a quarterback mind. So now you got a guy at rush end, and he's kind of looking at the situation, and he could probably do his pre-snap reads just like a quarterback. Maybe not Tom Brady level, but he'll be able to take a look and go, okay, and know the play and know what's coming. That kind of insight might be great. He's got a high motor. I was really happy that Solomon Byrd flashed a lot last year. He had a couple of games, but he just was totally inconsistent. Hopefully he can get a little more consistent with that. So there's all kinds of studs coming in too. So I don't want to say that there's going to be a problem. I'm just saying it's unproven. I'm saying there's a lot of unproven guys on that rush end position. Romello Height, please stay healthy. That would be awesome. Brendan Shelby, the freshman, David Peavy. I don't think they get a lot of time, but maybe towards the end of the year, they get a little size as developed. They might get some run. But I think of all the position groups, I think that edge position is going to be huge. The problem we're having those explosive plays is because we were not getting any pressure on the quarterback. And I think what I've heard over and over again, I don't know that much about Grinch's system, but from what I heard, the linchpin to his system is getting pressure on that quarterback. And if you let the guy sit back there comfortably, and there's you can't collapse a pocket. That's another thing though. Why I'm happy about the defensive line. So you brought up the defensive line. The defensive line, there's some kind of proven guys. You got Kyron Barr. Kyron Barr's up there, big dude in the middle. So that'll be maybe we can push. Big part of getting pressure on the quarterback is pushing that pocket, collapsing that pocket, and so the guys can get to the quarterback. I'm happy with the fact we're not saying linebacker. I mean, we could put that baby to rest. Well, I shouldn't celebrate yet, but I think that's going to be shored up. I think those run fits will be shored up. Can we get pressure on the quarterback? And that's going to be on an unproven edge rush position.
One other really big talking point, we're going to be, I mean, it's a long off season. We're going to be repeating a few talking points, certainly to a particular degree in April, in May, June, July. Like there are a lot of months. There's only so much you can say. So we're going to be repeating ourselves to a degree. But one other major talking point to bring up on tonight's show, Tim, is that, to me, and I want to get your thoughts on this, but to me, it doesn't matter all that much who is starting in week 0 against San Jose State in late August. Like, for any college football fan base, it's, who's going to be opening day starter? Who's going to be number 1 on the depth chart? And, I think a lot of people might say, okay, who's going to win this race? Who's going to win this camp battle? And to me, going into 2023 at USC, I don't view that as a particularly big concern. And why is that? Well, it's what we've been talking about to a certain degree already about the backloaded schedule and how you have this nice little glide path through the first 6 games to learn about what you have on your roster, and particularly the first 3 games before the off week in mid-September. Like, to me, it's a lot less important who's starting in week 1. What really matters, who's starting against Notre Dame. That's going to be really the question. In many ways, the first half of the season sets up the second. in terms of, where this coaching staff, where Alex Grinch identifies the top performers. Like in many ways, like we don't have a preseason in college football, not technically, not officially, but in many ways, the first 6 games of the season are going to be basically, the job of Grinch and the defensive staff is going to be what's going to put us in the best position to beat Notre Dame, to beat Utah, to beat Oregon, to beat Washington, to win the games that are going to make or break the season. The first 6 games are going to be the playground or the laboratory, whatever word you want to use for that. And so one of the particularly interesting questions is going to be, by the time we get to October, by the time we get to, crunch time for this team, will Tackett Curtis, hey, Archer Quick, right in tune with that. Will Tackett Curtis be ready after the first half of the season, getting familiarized with everything, adjusting to the speed of the college game? Like, everything I've seen, everything I've read suggests that he's, that he could be a superstar and that he will just be a truck stick linebacker in terms of finishing plays, making ferocious tackles. He doesn't, it's not important to me. I mean, other fans might disagree, but it's not important to me that like Tackett Curtis has to be starting by week 1 or even by week 3. But where's he going to be by the time we get to South Bend and the Irish? And it's going to be really interesting for him and other newcomers and how they evolve in that first half of the season so that they're ready for when we get into crunch time in mid-October.
Yeah, he looks like he's a junior, that being Tackett Curtis, but he's not, and he's got to make that adjustment. And I'm sure he's feeling it already. I mean, I know he's a specimen. He's got all the tools. He's gonna need to get his reps in, and I think that we have the guys right now. They will bring him along, and like we're talking about, we're hoping that the second half of these games will allow for these guys to get their reps, to get their game reps. So look for the slow development. We're talking about Braylon Shelby, Tackett Curtis. These guys are going to be, I believe, I'm hoping they're going to be a piece of the puzzle later in the season, but they're going to need to get their time early. Also, remember, Zion Branch and Damani Jackson, they may not be hopping in. Well, I don't know, maybe Branch, but they're slowly going to get into the mix. I believe all 4 of those guys will see significant time, including especially the guys coming off of injury. Can we hop back to this really quick?
Sure.
So we have Gixter Squid here saying that I please agree respectfully. The most worrisome position group is special teams. Look, I know this is getting a lot of play with there's no special teams coach, etc. But I don't know how to say his name. Zaplicki, the kicker.
Yeah,
the punter
from Arizona State. Yeah.
The guy was all conference punter. Okay, so punting, we could probably check that one off. I think we're gonna be okay there. Kick returners. Have you seen the guys we have at kick returner? I can't wait. Talking about getting some game reps. I can't wait to see Zachariah Branch return a kickoff or a punt, because I know that we had a Dory Jackson, but this guy might be the closest thing to Reggie Bush we've had since Reggie Bush, right? He's explosive. It looks like he's literally running at a different speed than everybody else around him. It's like he's effortlessly just running away from people. When you watch all these like 7 on tape and stuff, when you watch him play in some of the All-Star games, the kid is fast and he's special. I think we might be a bit gun shy because we decided to lateral the ball at the 1 yard line during the Cotton Bowl, but it wasn't overly, there's a great thing now in college football. They could all just fair catch the damn thing and get the ball at the 25 yard line. So if there are any issues, that's probably what they're going to start doing. But I think with all the athletes we have, with all the speed we have, with all the athletes we have, I think we're going to maybe we'll take a couple at the 15 because one of these guys is going to break one. It's been a long time since we've seen like this kind of returns. We have like 4 or 5 guys that, are going to be electric to watch out there. So I'm not really concerned. Kicking, that's kind of a little bit of a worry for me. I don't know if we got the kicking situation down, but other than place kicking, I'm happy with special teams and then the additions they made. What do you think?
Well, Gixer, I would say that that's the most worrisome position on the coaching staff. That's where special teams comes into play, because you can have the raw material, but if it's not coached up well, then that's where you have a deficit. And when we get to Notre Dame, I mean, I would say, since Notre Dame still has Brian Mason as its special teams coach, and Notre Dame was so good at blocking punts, when we get to the Notre Dame game, we're going to see Caleb Williams quick kicking, right? Like Lincoln Riley, that was an admission, right? A
He should
concession.
have been. Hey, he should have been the All Pac-12 punter. What was his average punt? You know what I mean? I don't know. We should take a look at that. The net punt for yet, but yeah.
But I'm convinced that we're going to see more quick kicks from Caleb Williams against Notre Dame. Because why have the Notre Dame punt block unit on the field? So like that was a shrewd move by Riley, and like he can find other workarounds at some points. But yeah, place kicking, that's not something where you can have a workaround. So Tim, like I would agree with you that if there is a really particular worry, it's place kicking. And
it was very inconsistent, huh, Matt?
We need to see that hold up under fire. And like, yeah, in a close game, you can't be giving away 3, 6, 9 points. So that I think that's the way to balance it.
Thank you, Gixter Squid, for the $9.99 super chat. I hope you're right. Honestly, I just feel like special teams is an afterthought for Lincoln Riley.
And Gixer, like we're praying that the NCAA allows for an expanded 11th on-field coach, because if Lincoln, if that waiver or that rule proposal gets amended, then Lincoln Riley has zero excuse to not hire a special teams coordinator. So hopefully the size of a on-field coaching staff will be expanded such that this issue goes away, because it is worth reminding everybody that you're limited to the number of on-field assistants that you can have. And if we get rid of the limitation, or at least if we expand the allowable number of on-field coaches you can have, then Lincoln Riley would do this. But he thinks that with the current number, 10, that he just needs to be focusing on position coaches. So that's something to keep in mind. Hopefully there will be reform and change in terms of what is allowed, because then this issue goes away.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, though. I thought the past we got in trouble. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think it was a special teams analyst that was on the practice field, and we got like a minor violation, and all the fans around the country wanted to go, get the death penalty for our second violation because we were on probation and blah blah blah. And what it was I believe it was a special teams analyst. Now, in the old days, an analyst could not be on, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. They could not be there during practice and working with the players during practice. They could just be an analyst, right, and talk to the coaches, correct? But I think they changed that rule, and now those analysts can be on the field. Am I right about that? And if that's the case,
my understanding, I don't know this for sure. So
yeah.
So don't
in the chat. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Don't take this as gospel. My understanding is you just can't be on the field or in the stadium during a game.
That's how it used to be, right? I thought that they might have had to change the rule. I thought I heard there was a. I'm looked that up, so I'm not.
Like you definitely can't be anywhere in the stadium on game day.
Okay, and then Gixer, I'm more than a half glass full guy. If you haven't noticed, I'm usually a glass 3/4 full, especially when it comes to my Trojans. I try to be objective. I'm just saying, like you guys made a great point. We don't have a dedicated coach. I'm not sure if it's an afterthought, because I just get a little bit. I wince every time someone says he doesn't care about defense. He doesn't care about the dude is a top-notch coach, and I'm some schmuck, and I know there's three parts to football. And if I know it, Lincoln Riley knows it. You know what I mean? So I think we have to, at some point, we have to stop listening to that stuff coming out of Norman, right? And realize that this guy really is one of the best coaches in football. And I don't believe he has that big of a blind spot. I do see both your concern that there's not a dedicated coach, but I'm, until the guy proves wrong, I'm gonna ride with what his decisions are. So there's that. But thanks again very much for that super chat. We really appreciate it. Mark really appreciates it.
Tim, any last thoughts? Because we usually cap these shows at like an hour 15, and of course we had a 15-minute delay, but this is usually
I'm so sorry, guys.
No problem. But I'm just saying this is usually where we call it a night. So just anything you'd like to wrap up with.
No, I'm really just excited. I think everyone should be. I don't think we talked a little bit about coach speak last night on our show. I think, of course, there's always some coach speak in there, but you can hear the general excitement in this staff when they're talking. They see something special in this group. I think we all saw something really special last year Things did not look right on defense. I know this. Caleb is a national championship quarterback. This offense is a national championship offense. Lincoln Riley, regardless of what people tell you around, is a national championship caliber coach. Do we have a national championship caliber defense? It does not have to be Georgia. It doesn't have to be 2008 USC, right? It doesn't have to be 2003, even 2003 USC. It doesn't have to be that good. It just needs to be somewhere in that top 30, in the 20s, or somewhere around there, get in the teens. I'm not saying we will win a national championship, but if the pieces here and this defense clicks enough to get them a top 25 defense, we will be in the playoffs. And then it's anybody's game. So that's my thought. I just want you guys to realize that, get excited. Just remember 2 years ago, guys, whenever you start want to get really critical of this program, this administration, it's like, I've done all this, I've gone through so I started following towards the end of the Larry Smith, right, tenure, and into the JR2, and then Hackett, and oh my God. And then I went to school. I was there with Pete Carroll, and you guys just gotta, when it's good, just enjoy it a little bit. That's all I want to say to you guys. This won't last forever. Riley could go to the NFL next year. You don't know. Please enjoy this season. That's what I want to leave you with. Remember where we were. Remember where USC. The administration, no matter what, if Riley does leave, I do believe that Bone will get the right piece of the place. I do believe the administration now does want to win football. We're going to the Big Ten. Enjoy this ride, because it doesn't always last. So that's my last word.
Okay, and the reminder, folks, as we close down here at the Voice of College Football, check out Tim Prangley and Rick Anaya, LBC Trojan, for Trojan Conquest Live, Sundays at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, here at the Voice of College Football. So Tim and Rick, they'll be on the air Sunday evening, and we'll see if they have a Duce Robinson Welcome to USC show, or if there is an ugly April Fool's plot twist on Saturday, April 1st. But you'll be able to hear frontline analysis from Tim and Rick Sunday at 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, here at the Voice of College Football. This is Matt Zemek. Thank you, Tim Prangley, for pinch hitting, filling in for Mark Rogers. And we thank you for watching, and thanks to Gixxer for the contribution. Keep the contributions coming. Subscribe to, like, share the Voice of College Football on the USC channel here at the Voice of CFB. Thanks, everybody.